Before we get into the show, there is a way that you can help support the show. A very easy way, in fact.
If you go to our website, eatlunchandboardgame.com, click on the Get the Games tab. There we have affiliate links to many of the games and books we have talked about. If you're interested in purchasing any, by clicking on the link, a small portion of your purchase will go to us.
But we promise to use the money wisely by buying more games to review.
We take our jobs very seriously.
Now on with this great episode.
In a past episode, our guest Camilla Zamboni mentioned The Tabletop Revolution, a fascinating book by fellow professor Marco Arnaudo. In it, Professor Arnaudo explores the dramatic evolution of board games, how mechanics have transformed from simple numbered cards to dynamic, multifunctional game elements. We dive into this revolution, celebrating classics like Acquire, a game so essential that Professor Arnaudo calls it foundational. And honestly, he's right. Everyone should play it. Plus, we squeeze in a fun Planes, Trains, and Automobiles shout-out along the way. He also talks about donating some games to the Lilly Library to find out how many. Keep listening. All right, welcome back to Lunch and Board Game. I'm your host, Adam Collins. And with me today is Professor Marco Arnaudo from Indiana University, who wrote the book Tabletop Revolution that a prior guest told me I should check out. So I reached out and got the book and read it. So Marco, how you doing?
Pretty good. How about you?
Not too bad. Not too bad. So your book, Tabletop Revolution, is amazing.
Well, thank you.
It took me forever to read through it because I kept stopping and looking up this game and then that game and then this next game. And then you'd mention a study. So then I'd go look up the study and then I'd go look up this other book. It took me forever to get through your book because I just kept getting distracted. So
awesome. Thank you. You're using it right. That's how it was intended. It was intended not to, end or cover the topic, but to stimulate interactions and explorations.
Oh, well, mission accomplished.
Oh,
now, my wife's not so happy because I ordered a lot of those books. I ordered a lot of those games. I've got 5 ordered. Or downloaded. A couple were print and plays.
Could be worse.
Yeah.
Could be worse.
So the first one to show up, a Universal Truth, the card game. Oh my gosh. When I read about that in your book, I immediately put down the book, looked the game up, immediately reached out to the designer because I'm like, this game looks fantastic. He graciously just mailed me a copy.
Nice.
And he was like, well, how'd you hear about this? And I said, well, in the book by Marco Arnaudo. And he's like, oh, did he have good things to say about it? I'm like, well, yeah, that's why I'm reaching out to you. So he posted on his Facebook account, like, hey, check out this book. You know, my game's mentioned in it. He's like, I totally forgot I even gave him a copy.
Yeah, it's been a couple of years.
Man.
But you need to point out to your wife that was a free copy. Sometimes
that's what he said. Yeah, he's like, well,
important.
This one's free.
No.
So Universal Truth. So your book. Okay, let's take a step back. Your book. Explain what your book is.
So, my book is the only book that I wrote because I needed it, not just because I had things to say. I needed the darn book. I couldn't find one, so I may as well write it. Because at the time I was teaching an intro class for the media school at the U, an intro class about board games. And so I was looking for a general overview of all that has changed in the last 20 years, the new mechanics and things like that. And I would find maybe a book that has a good chapter, a book with 3 chapters. And so the students ended up buying a bunch of books and only read a bit of this and a bit of that. And I felt bad about it. I thought, why don't I just sit down and write down what has changed? Start from the beginning. Games have less luck. We don't have play elimination. We have more decisions. Fine. What makes an interesting decision? What are the new concepts, the new mechanics? So I wrote it, and I already had in mind the idea that it could be used, of course, like any reader could just get a sense of the discipline, but could also be used as a textbook. And so if you look at the chapter and the structure, I thought of it for a 15-week semester, which is what we do at IU. And you pretty much have one chapter per week. You break chapter 7 in two because it's particularly long, and then you have 2 weeks at the end for the final project. So that was the idea, something that somebody like you could read it and could also be very organically, very simply adopted as the textbook in a class about board games. And I used it multiple times, and it works. It works that way.
Yeah, and the way that you track the revolution of games is fantastic. And that's what, man, those early chapters were so great because I mean, so back to Universal Truth. It is a card game, pretty much a card game with like 212 cards. So a
Mhm.
lot of cards. But it's the way in which the cards are used. Every every square inch of that card is
Yes.
used, and how you use it, and if you use the right side of the card for this, the
Mhm.
top side of the card for that. And that's when I read about it in your book, and then I went to get the game. I'm like, this is amazing. And so it finally showed up. You and I both live in the Midwest, and so we've had some snow that
Yes.
and some ice, and who knows what else fell from the sky. But it finally showed up, and I'm telling you, my son and I sat down to play it a couple nights ago because it finally got here. The tracking number at one point was just like, yeah, we have it. Don't know where it is, but we have it. Um, and it was a fantastic game, and so I'm very happy that you uh,
Excellent.
mentioned that because it is a great game. And then the worker placement section, I love worker placement games, and so I got
Mhm.
Cryo because
Okay, that's a great one. I don't think it has become a modern classic, maybe because it's a bit complex. It's just kind of like I make the point, the complexity increases over time. But what do you think about it?
I just got that one just arrived, so I haven't played it yet.
Mhm.
What drew me to that one was the fact that it's worker placement both directions.
Yep.
When you put your worker on the board, it does something. When you bring your worker back from the board, it does something on where you place it. And I'm like, that sounds great. I watched a couple videos on it, and I found it on eBay for cheap. So, but
And both boards change, both the main board and what used to be the neutral area where you store your workers, now it's its own mini game. And both boards are modular.
yep,
Both boards change during gameplay. And so basically what you're pointing out, both Universal Truth and Cryo is part of this trend that modern games, true, they're more complex than older games, but they train their players. Because if you play a regular worker placement like Stone Age, now you know the idea. I'm placing the worker. Then you add a detail, but the workers maybe are different types. And then you have another kind of game. Or the workers, they do something both ways, and you have multiple things. So the hobbies become more complex, but just together with how the players have become more passionate and more able to play more complex games.
and I like how you said the hobby is training the players. Like
Yes.
you, and that's what. So I work a lot with children
Mhm.
and teaching them games, and being able to work with them. Like you can't obviously, I mean, Candyland and all those have their place, right?
Mhm.
Just not with me anymore. I'm tired of those games. But you can find games that take the idea of Candyland and just add another thing to it, and now you've got a
Mhm.
different game. Or, you know, some of the newer games for kids, there's a progression. If they can learn A, then you can take them to B, then you can take them to C,
Mhm.
and you can start seeing a bunch of the progression that these kids are learning. Like you said, the hobby's training it the players, and
Yeah.
it works way down at the kids level too, and it's so great. We got a lot of kids in our neighborhood, so A lot of my games get borrowed from the neighbors. So,
Hmm.
but it's
And
great. It's great.
one of my favorite games to do that, not just uh, through the scenario, you can go from extremely simple to extremely complex. Is Kitchen Rush, which again is a worker placement, but the workers are timers. You know, you have to turn when the sand is on the bottom half. That's when you can replace them. And I had a niece, and she came to visit. Maybe she was 8, and she's not a strong gamer, but we start from the basic scenario. We played all weekend, and by the end, she was playing the complicated scenarios where you had to do like a million different things. Very few people, including myself, would be able to grok the game if you start from the late scenario. But you just play them all in order, and you can get one step at a time. You know, I don't know if it's a coincidence, but I think maybe modern game designers have taken the inspiration from video game tutorials. Because, back in my day, you bought a video game and you studied the 20-page manual, and then you played the game because you were supposed to know everything from the beginning. And then the video games I realized they can teach you one mechanic at a time. And I guess board game designers have realized the same thing. You don't have to hit the player with the entire potential of the game all at once.
No, and that's the other thing I like about Universal Truth is his game, the base game. He even says start with this, and then add this module, which adds a different way that the cards are used. I'm telling you, these cards are amazing in how it's just a standard poker card
Mhm.
that has every use under the sun. Because, like I said, he doesn't waste anything. Except he should have done a little bit better font for the names of all the people. Because my goodness, you can't read them. Um,
Mhm.
then you add this font or this module, then this module, and then he has like 6 modules. He's like, and then you can play the whole game. And my son and I were like, wow, let's do this. Anybody, again, it's a combination of not just the cards, you have the rondelle mechanic, there's a little bit of luck with the dice roll, but even that becomes strategic on if I know my son needs this card,
Mhm.
can I get
Mhm.
to it ahead of him or can I get in front of him and mess up to where he can't use the dice to get to it? So that I just thoroughly enjoyed that game. We can't wait to play Cryo. I've got a couple more from a company you mentioned out of Canada, the
Old family pastimes.
Family Pastimes.
Again, they are the little the unacknowledged inventors of cooperative gaming. I don't know if they're the real true inventor, but the first ones to do it consistently.
All of
It's a
his
quiet
games.
small company. Quiet small company. Many people don't know about them, but they have a very dedicated following in some of those
Yeah, I've
games.
been talking to him. I
Yeah,
got 4 of his games coming
awesome.
because I was like, I mean, this one sounds good. This one sounds good. Oh, that
Hmm.
one sounds good. I cut myself off at 4. Um, but yeah, I mean, all his games are cooperative. Like I said, I reached out to him and he sent me like a paper that he wrote about cooperative games, and it was really good. And talks about how he likes cooperative games because it's not competitive. Everybody's helping each other,
Hmm.
and you know, he's like, I think there's no player elimination because you're working together. Um, so you
And to me,
all,
that's the fact that now, cooperative gaming, as you can see, has been around for a while, but this is a small company. Many people don't know about it. But now in the 21st century, it's not that really that cooperative gaming has been invented, but it has become big. And
yeah,
that's kind of like a point that I find is very important. In my book, I kind of point out some of these ideas had been found before in the 70s and the 80s. They just weren't big, so the time wasn't ready. So it's not that the designers could not come up with the idea. There wasn't a community of passionate players that would make this idea big. The example I give is a la carte, this game that has like one edition in the 1990s and then like 20 editions since 2010. Is the same game. It can't be about the game. It has to be that now people are looking for different things. And that simple idea of action selection now is big. And in the 1990s was too weird, I guess.
yeah, maybe too weird is probably the right definition of exactly how the people probably view these. A lot of the games from the 80s and 90s, they were all roll and move or area control. That was
Yeah.
really all they were. So I want to take a step back I also read the article you wrote on the bookshelf games, the bookcase games.
Oh yes, yes.
I love those games. I have a lot of them. Obviously, not as much as you. You definitely have more than me. But how great is Acquire?
It's foundational, basically.
Oh
Again,
my
it's
gosh.
I don't think it's a coincidence that it has been around since. It's the only one that made it,
60
and it is
years.
yes, and it is really, in a sense, the foundation of Eurogaming. It's kind of funny that what used to be called German style games and then Eurogaming, that's the idea. That's the idea. And as you can see, it starts with repurposing older mechanics and adding some to it because ultimately it's like bingo with more choices. You had that element of deciding based on that randomness. You had choice of traditional mechanic. And basically, that's another pattern that I describe in the book. You take an older game and you ask yourself, how can I give players more choices? And you already have I don't know if it's a better game, but it's a more modern game. It's a game that will be more likely to appeal to modern players.
Yeah, and Acquire it turned 60. They put out the 60th anniversary edition, which is a beautiful edition. They got rid of the paper money, went with clay poker chips. Oh, so beautiful. But
Mm-hmm.
uh, I took that to my group and they were like, "This is an amazing game." I'm like, "Yeah." And I took my old, so I found the 3M edition at a craft fair, and man, we played it once, and they were like, "This is the greatest game." I'm like, and it is 60 years old.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my gosh. That was a fun article talking about the storage of the games and how they were built to stand upright on a bookcase. And then, so,
Mm-hmm.
very
Or like how,
interesting.
yeah. I mean, it was an attempt. In a certain sense, the attempt was ahead of its time because they were trying to kind of create a hobby community of people who would be proud to show books on a shelf. But then you look at the kind of target audience that they had in mind. It was middle class working adults who were not necessarily playing games as their hobby. Now we do take pride in lining up shelves and shelves of games. We have the shelfie. When AG published their three games, Airplanes and Automobiles. And so when you like, they were, I didn't realize it as we were releasing them. Then they put them on the shelf and people are saying, oh my gosh, that's funny because they formed the name of the movie.
Oh, so
But
good.
also, sorry, Airplanes, Trains, and Automobiles. So that's in the aggregate, it's fun. It's a certain effect. They had thought already how are these games going to look on the shelf. They have the same font and everything, which is a kind of consideration that again, the Avalon Hill and 3M before them they already had.
Mm-hmm.
But again, there weren't enough hobbyists that wanted to have a game, a shelf full of games uh, for that aesthetic element to really come into play or to be appreciated, I should say.
Yeah. And then they kind of brought it back in the early 2000s. Target had all the old Parker Brothers Hasbro games. They put in the wood container, the wood
Oh
boxes
yes.
that
Mm-hmm.
stood up on the edge. And so I have a handful of those too. So I have those with my 3M and my Avalon Hill and all those on a bookshelf. And like I said, I don't have nearly the collection of them that you do, but
Mm-hmm.
they look great.
Well, I do and I don't because, as you may know, I donated most of my collection last year to the Lilly Library at Indiana University.
Yeah.
There's a video in which I describe donating about 5,000 games. They sent two trucks, and it was a
Wow.
process. It was a process. It's a collection they put together again over 5,000, in part for scholarly purposes because I'm studying these things and I teach these things. And guess what? I cannot just go to a library, a local game collection, and examine the materials the way I can do, say, for a rare book when I'm teaching or
Yeah.
investigating literature. So I put the collection together as a research collection. So I was able to write the book that you read, and I was able, because otherwise those games I have no other way of accessing other than buying them.
Yeah.
And in
And
the previous game, storytelling in the modern board game, again, a lot of narrative driven role playing game based games of the 70s. I had to buy them. There was no other way. But once I have investigated them, and they do look cool on the shelves, but then the joists under the building start cracking, so I'm a little bit worried. I'm like, okay, it's nice to see them, but it's also nice not to have to redo the foundation. So I donated them to the Lilly Library, where they're cataloging them. They'll be cataloging them, and it just it's very close to my house. I can just go see them whenever. Um, and no, I wasn't playing 5,000 games every day anyway. So I kept those like 200 or so that really, really matters. And from now on, that's kind of like what I'm going to do. I'm going to fill the shelves. So actually, there isn't too much of an echo in the room when I am filming my videos. And then from time to time, when it starts overflowing, instead of getting to the point where I donate 5,000, I'll put together a couple of boxes and a couple of times a year I'll keep the donation of the Lilly Library up to date.
I mean, sounds like a great idea.
Mm-hmm.
And Lilly Library will be the place to go to try out games.
Yeah, try games, study games. If people here in the local community for Indiana University, they can have educational activities. They can bring the students there, and they can do activities with those. So I'm happy that I put them together, that I enjoy them, and I'm happy that now other people can enjoy them too.
Fantastic. So, what is your current game that you're playing? Your current favorite game that you like to play?
Oh, I just released, was it yesterday? A review of Finspan. I really enjoyed that one, and it's funny. Like I got it that day. I put it on the shelf, and we were scheduled to play a different game with friends that night. The friends come in, they see it, and they're like, "What are we talking about? They clean the table. We're gonna play Finspan because we got a lot of Span fans in the area." But then, who isn't? And I like
I
it. I
ordered my
love it.
copy. I should have my copy next week.
I love it because I loved the wingspan and the worm span, and Finspan is the most streamlined, is the easiest access. But again, we have all played the other span, so it's not that we needed it, but it's just really nice to get something simple, straightforward, smooth. You get into the fun of building the tableau and then spanning it with a couple of original twists, but it distills it down to the core without simplifying it, without impoverishing it. And to me, that's quite nice. Also, I have to say, fish are weird. Fish are weird. And so just the theme is just very entertaining. I just spend, just people reading out loud from these cards. Do you know that this fish does this or that? It's high quality of the components. The descriptions, again, are very captivating.
Just what you expect from Stonemeyer Games.
Yes.
But yeah,
so
I literally just watched a video before I watched a how-to video before jumping on this call with you, and I'm like, man, this seems very, very straightforward.
Yeah.
And because I got to Wingspan late, and so a lot of people already knew how to play Wingspan and were doing it, and it was hard for them to teach me how to play it because they already knew how to play it. So now I feel like now once I get Finspan and I have Wormspan as well, maybe I can go back and kind of try to learn Wingspan again on my own. And I think I'll have a better time because I do think Wormspan's fun. And I'm excited for Finspan just because it seems so approachable.
It is. It is the most approachable, and it's the real thing, and it's super fun. Now, the idea that, incidentally, I also happened to play Wingspan after my friends had been playing it for a while, and of course, they were way ahead. Like I had no chance because they knew the design so well. And a point that I make in the book is that sometimes you hear that the cult to the new in board games, it means shallow, cash cow, blah blah blah. But well, first, if people can buy new games all the time and enjoy them, new games all the time, they can afford it. So that's not my business to complain how they want to spend their money and their time. But the beauty is when you play multiple games and there are new games all the time, it levels the field because people are learning a new game together. And so there isn't one person who knows everything already. And that person is either going to destroy everybody or play subpar just to be merciful, but then the person is not going to enjoy. and the people who know they're doomed. And I play against mathematicians, okay? I have mathematicians over you that come to my game night. So you know I'm afraid of nothing. So my only saving grace from time to time, if the game is new and we're all learning it, I have a chance the first time we play. Then they're like, are we going to play again? Sure, because I'm going to lose. I know that.
Yeah,
But still.
I had that first game.
Yeah, I had the first game. Those memories will be with me forever. But the general idea, if you play new games, if you're learning new games, it's a more even field.
Yeah.
There
No,
isn't the
I agree.
advantage of being the veteran.
No, I agree. My group tends to get sometimes stuck and wanting to keep playing the same game, and but they also have games that they have played for years that I haven't, and
Mhm.
for me to try to jump in and learn Terra Mystica is like, you guys play this
Yes.
game, and this is so far beyond what I play. So,
Mhm. And
so
I
do
still
you?
have the games. I still have the games that somebody says, "Well, are we going to play them?" I'm always up for those. I'm always happy to play the crypto. If we have 6 people exactly, I'm going to say, "Why don't we play the crypto?" One of my favorite. Senshi, super simple. Sagrada, Splendor.
Mm,
I would never say no to Splendor, even if I played it so many times.
yeah,
So there's a core of games that I'm never tired of, but then there are just so many more that are it's exciting to play. And
yeah,
so I just like to try new
absolutely.
games all the time.
No, I think, yeah. I mean, that's kind of my son and I, when we go through and cull the collection, we try to go through and what games are we no longer going to play because this game scratches that itch that we,
Hmm.
and like kind of like your book, like what game took this idea and expanded on it, and now I don't
Hmm.
need that other game. And we try to, and I try to be a little bit pickier about what games I buy and stuff. So, but so do you guys? Does you have a like a board game club or anything that you?
There are, yeah, the undergrad students have board game clubs. And I used to join them. And then since there were more like adult people, other, yeah, grad students, professors, and just adults from the community, then I started hosting game night at my place. So yeah, they're good. They're playing their games. They don't need me to supervise them, and we can just have people playing games at my house. So we have a nice group. We usually meet on Friday, and that's my main game night. And again, I'm so grateful that the hobby these days has so many options for solo players, which
Yep.
again is a thing. It means that
Hmm.
people are excited about gameplay, not just playing games for social interaction. But then, of course, we don't hate social interaction either. Otherwise, most games would be for one player. The 1 to 4, which is the golden range these days, that shows you that we love being social and also we love playing the games. So the option of being able to play it when you don't have game night is very attractive. Again, I
Yeah.
noticed that pattern that not only we have more games with the solitaire option, but even old games that didn't have it when they're published, again, very often they gain it. David Torzi appears out of nowhere, boom, and here's a solo version.
Yep.
But the opposite, as far as I know, is not true. I don't see any trend of games that had a solitaire option, say 10 years ago, and they lose it in modern editions. That's not a trend.
No. No, I can't imagine. But I kind of got into some solo gaming. For me, what really got me into solo gaming was Final Girl.
Oh yeah, yeah, Final Girl. Yeah, I played a little, not a lot, but a little.
Oh,
I had the
I love it.
Kickstarter version.
Yeah, I love it. And I just kind of keep buying like new packs,
Uh-huh.
yeah, and
New stories. Hmm.
yeah, new stories, and I can lose to any of those bad guys. They're all good at killing me.
I used
Uh,
to do that a lot. I used to do that a lot with Lord of the Rings, the card game, the cooperative card game, where you also could buy a single scenario, maybe about this one enemy, this one mission, and I used to play that solitaire all the time. Yeah,
but yeah, and I think the rise of two-player games has also been very good. Um,
absolutely.
because to me, a lot of times games that play fewer than three, sometimes that solo or two-player feels different,
Hmm.
and so games that are designed for two-player, love them. Like
That's the
right
deal.
now, yeah, like right
Yes.
now we are obsessed with Sky Team.
Oh my gosh, that's funny you mention it. There is gonna be a review that I already filmed it and it's scheduled to be released. So because I played it during Christmas break, during a
So good.
trip, and I was like, maybe you shouldn't play. Maybe we shouldn't play a game where we crash the airplane and burst into a ball of flame before we get on the airplane to
Yeah,
go
yeah,
back home. But we loved it. We loved it
you
anyway.
overshoot it. Yeah. Oh man,
Yeah.
Sky
Hey,
Team is
I
great.
learned incredible factoids that you need to take a tight left turn before landing in Tokyo. I don't know when I can ever use in a conversation, but that's a fun factoid. I guess I use it now. I found the
Yeah.
loophole. But yes, great
Just
game.
remind the
As for
pilot when you're flying to Tokyo, hey, don't forget to make that tight left there.
yeah,
He'll
title.
be
Yeah,
like,
yeah. Say, hey, I
thank
need to
you.
talk to the pilot. Sorry, can I? I have information that they may want
I've
to know.
made this. I've made this flight many times.
Yes. Oh, and speaking of two-player games and games that, despite me liking playing new games, a game that I would always play is Patchwork.
Oh yeah,
Patchwork just never. I never get tired of that one.
yeah. I like
Just
Jaipur a lot.
fantastic. Hmm?
Jaipur.
Jaipur. Oh, Jaipur. Yes,
Yeah,
yes. I played a long time ago.
yeah.
Now,
And
yes.
there's something about that. Like I just like the 2 player, fast paced,
Mhm.
the depleting resources. But there's
And
just
if you
so
know
much.
it, oh, speaking of depleting resources, two players, fast play, are you familiar with Dynasties, which was later reprinted as Sun Tzu? I prefer the old edition. The components are simpler. It's just like black and white cubes on a board, discard driven. It's when I teach about Sun Tzu in my classes that I use the game to exemplify the concepts of Sun Tzu. Because I think that was the idea behind the design. If you play the way Sun Tzu says you to fight a war, you have better chances of winning than otherwise.
Hmm.
It's extremely elegant, extremely simple. And again, it's called Dynasties in the original edition. It's a small yellow box. And then they did like a big one with plastic soldiers. And I don't think it added anything to the game.
Not supposed to.
So highly recommend that. One of my
Look into
favorite
that one.
games.
So if you were going to play a 30-minute game, what would be your go-to 30-minute half-hour game?
Again, so many. But as if we have a large group or like more than 3-4 people, say 3-4 people, possibly man, I'm blanking. It's one of my favorite games, and I can't remember the name. It's Sea Adventure. Is it Sea Adventure? Is a tiny game by Oink Games, those Japanese games,
Oh man,
in which you
with the
dive.
sub and you got to dive and you got air.
Yes, and then you die. Then you die. And that's Deep Sea Adventure. There you go. How weird of me! I couldn't remember it. Played it so many times. That never fails to impress. And it's better if you have an hour though, because the first game everybody's gonna die. Everybody's gonna die. The second game they realize, oh, okay, I guess we can go.
Maybe I shouldn't go that deep.
But then they're gonna do it anyways. That's the beauty. That's how the game tricks you. It has an impeccable engine to tempt you to do the wrong thing. I don't know many other games that do that so diabolically that you shouldn't do it, and you see yourself doing it, and you do it.
And then you die, and you're like, I knew I shouldn't have done it.
Yeah.
But
Next time I'm not gonna do it again. And
yes,
guess what? So that's definitely one of my favorite.
What about a 60-minute game? A full hour.
2 hours. Oh gosh.
For a full
Again,
60
Splendor.
minutes.
When I go back to Splendor, probably. That was the crypto, since I mentioned those, and those work within that time frame.
What about with Splendor? Did you play the expansions?
I played those, and then I went back to the original. I think I really just like the elegance and simplicity of the original. Even some of the other versions, the Marvel version, they're all nice, but then I just find that I want to play the other one. Sagrada, it's another great one for about that amount of time. And you know what? Probably Finspan in the future with like 3-4 players. So with 5, it takes a little longer. But actually, once we're all familiar, I think Finspan is gonna be probably like a 1-hour game. Matter of fact, I did play with 2 players, and it was less than an hour. That could be that. I think that's gonna how do I call it? Scratch that itch. As for slightly longer, if nothing else, if you also take into account setting it up, put it away, then there's fromage. That's gonna take longer. But what a game! Holy wow, what a game!
Yeah, all about making
So much
cheese.
going on. Yes, and
Hmm.
just playing those mini games while you're making cheese. That's excellent stuff.
So, what about a hidden gem, a game you don't think enough people know about that you love?
Hmm. You know what? A game that it would be Lost Cities, the board game. Lost Cities, the board game, one of those that never became a modern classic, but I think it deserves to be known as one of the great gateway games. And I know that works because from time to time people ask me, "Hey, I have some friends. They just moved to town, or some friends from church, or some friends from this and that. It's a family. They play Clue. They like to play something more." I say, "Give try that game," and they come back and say, "Oh my gosh, that family, those friends were super impressed." Is the perfect gateway game. Uh, doesn't have to replace, King of Tokyo or Ticket to Ride, for example, but it can be part of the pool. It's a simple game, incredibly simple,
It's so hard to
and
find.
I guess these days it
Yeah.
is.
Now the card
Oh,
game got a I
hmm
played the card game a lot, but I've never played the actual board game
the
because
board game,
I
yes,
just haven't been
no,
able to find it anywhere for a reasonable price. It's everything's available if you're willing to pay for it. Which brings me
that
to my
is true.
Yeah, which brings you into my next question. Is there a grail game for you, a game that you're trying to find that you haven't been able to find, or a specific edition of a game?
You know what? I can't think one. I can't think of one that I've been looking for. Um, No, if nothing else, I guess there's so much new stuff coming out that I want to try. That I guess like every new game that comes out, I want to try it more or less. But no, I would say no. I can't think. Of course, as soon as we end the conversation, I'll think, "Oh, wait a second, that's the one." But right now, no, I'm extremely happy with where the market is going, where the culture is going. There's so much great stuff coming out all the time, and oh, another hidden gem that not enough people know about is hoarders. 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 Have you heard of
No,
that one?
no.
Of course you haven't. It was a small print. They sent me a review copy and I played it, reviewed it glowingly. And people came to my house and we played a game and people loved it. And then they came back. And because of that, they learned that it was a very rare game because like we can't find it anywhere. The only copies in Europe. They don't distribute in the US. Hoarders is an incredibly simple game. Matter of fact, if I describe it to you, you'll be like, "That's it. That's what Marco is like raving about." So I'm not gonna tell you much. I'm gonna tell you, teach it to
Mm.
people, and they're like, "That's it." After 2 rounds, people be like, "I don't want to play anything else in my life." This is the thing. It's one of the most fun, addictive games ever,
Mm.
and it's so simple that again, I don't. If I explain the rules, I'll give you the wrong impression.
That's
It's one of those
hilarious.
games that is disproportionately elegant and smart, and it's all about the interactions, the human interactions that triggers. You're gonna need a small group, like 3 to 5, but really 4 or 5. It plays 3 to 6, but 4 or 5 or 5 6. It's incredible.
I'll have
I
to,
think I read somewhere that we're making a new version. I mean, I'm working geek right now, and I see that there is a cover illustration that I don't know. So I hope that they'll make a new one. Um,
huh?
Hoarders.
I'll have to look into that one. So, what about a color? When you play, is there a specific color that you like to be?
No, what I do is I set up the game before the friends come for game night. I like that. If I say on Friday, I learn a new game, I set it up and I set it up for like 4 players, for example. And then I just and I randomly choose, the first player gets a card, an extra card, the second player gets, so I set up everything. And then I let people sit and then I take whatever place is left. So in a certain sense, I'm also randomized because they come in and they don't know exactly who the first player is, and so I'm randomizing in that way who is first. And so I just don't know what color I'm going to play. But I do like the idea of setting up in advance because it maximizes that one big game night
Yeah,
that I have.
absolutely. So, do you dabble with Kickstarter? Do you back Kickstarters? Have you created your own Kickstarter?
I back in the day I created a Kickstarter. Just like it was the first time the video reviewers were creating Kickstarters, and so I said I'll try my own, and it was successful. But then in time, I just realized that I just like to do my video reviews as my hobby entirely. And so just completely no advertisement, no Kickstarter, no fundraising, not asking people like this video or subscribe. I play games. I'll tell you what I think about it, and it's a pure hobby. And when it comes to my game designs, the ones that I publish with the Ganesha games, say For Against Darkness, For Against the Great Old Ones, or Pulp, they didn't need a Kickstarter because they're pen and paper games or miniature rules, so they didn't need a big production. So I didn't have Kickstarters for my designs.
Interesting. So, how do you pronounce Klaus Teuber's game? The Settlers of.
Oh, but now we call it the Catan only. We don't sell anymore, right?
Right. We don't know. It's just Catan.
Yeah. In my day, okay, just Catan. In my days, everybody, in the early 21st century, as far as I remember, everybody called it Settlers.
Yes.
No one called it Catan.
It's so funny that it went from being called Settlers to the exact opposite. Yeah.
The other half.
Yeah.
I guess it's more of a brand. Catan is more typical than more topical, more stands out better than Catan. But yes.
But yeah,
no one,
I mean, just last night I played the newest one, that New Energies. I played that last night.
Okay. Now, see, one problem with Settlers, again, it was the greatest game back in the day, no doubt. There was a time in the early 2000s I only played Settlers. That's how passionate I was about it. All right. And I don't play it anymore because it has been superseded by games that do what Settlers does so much better. I was so impressed in the late 2000s, you can get resources out of turn from time to time. Of course, so a game where you have a chance of getting resources out of turn, it felt the most interactive game I've ever played, and possibly it was. But of course, now we have games where you do get stuff every turn. You don't have to hope. The fact that there is no rubber banding, if there is, I haven't found it yet. So if one person starts getting a lot more resources, they just keep getting ahead and ahead and ahead. Again, there was less runaway leader than Monopoly, but still more than you have nowadays. So everything is relative to where it is in time. Fromage or some of the greatest games we see now, Wingspan, maybe 15 years from now, people will be like, oh, man, now it was so amazing by 2024, 25, but now, and that's okay. That's a good sign, maybe even. Some games will stay, will remain, like Acquire, like El Grande, like Splendor, I think will stay, will remain, A Ticket to Ride. When I played the big Ticket to Ride, again, greatest game I played by, what was it, 2008 or so. Now I rarely play that one, but I do play the smaller ones, the city ticket.
Oh yeah, the city ones are great.
Yeah, I prefer those to the main one, but there was nothing wrong with the main one when that was all that we had.
So I like how they have put out different maps where you don't have to buy the game again and again and again. You just buy a new map. And the United Kingdom Pennsylvania pack. The Pennsylvania to me is the only way I want to play Ticket to Ride anymore.
Oh no, I was talking about the small one. So the city ones.
The Berlin, New York. I have all those. Yes. Yeah. I'm just saying, like, when it comes to Ticket to Ride.
Oh, he's the main guy.
Just the Pennsylvania one with the added mechanic of the shares of stock is just fantastic. And then
Those games. I've been traumatized by trying to play 1830 once. I don't think it was like maybe 15 years ago. I don't think I ever recovered from that one. So trains and shares. No, no, grazie. No, I'm
I
out of
have
here.
yet
No,
to get into the 18XX games.
no rush, no
Yeah,
rush.
some
Choose
people
life.
swear by them. I
Don't
mean,
choose happiness.
yeah, well, that's just you look at some of those play times. They're like, oh, this is only a 6 hour game. I'm like, 6 hours.
And but it's not just 6 hours. It feels like 60, and it's just like the meanness of it all, the coldness of it all, the oh my gosh, just
Like six
the
hours.
most heartless games. I have a friend I can't believe he likes these games because he's so nice otherwise, but when he plays those, I'm like, Bob, I can't even recognize you.
Oh
Who
my
are you now?
gosh. I'm like, do
So
you know how
no,
many
it's not
games
my
of King
style.
of Tokyo I can play in 6 hours?
Mm-hmm.
I loved King of Tokyo.
King of Tokyo is great.
I'll
King of
play
Tokyo
that
is
one over
absolutely
and over.
great.
I just was kind of disappointed and let down with the King of Monster Island. I'm not gonna lie.
I haven't played that one.
I'll take King of Tokyo, King of New York any day.
Mhm. Yeah, King of New. I also like King of New York. When I reviewed it, I felt like I was the only person who liked it, but I'm glad to know that you liked it too.
So good,
Yeah.
so good. I mean, I could play King of Tokyo. Like that's what I use to get my kids gaming. It's what I
Hmm.
use to get other kids gaming that are a little bit older. Um,
Absolutely.
I mean, it's fantastic because the dice are the great equalizer, and
Hmm.
they could have just a lucky roll and kill you just as well as you could have a lucky roll and score 6 points. But
Hmm.
man, yeah, it's a good one, and all the little expansion monsters that add a different little mechanic to the game.
Hmm.
Oh, love them, just absolutely love them.
Oh, I
So
just actually remember another gateway game that is one of my absolute favorites. And since you mentioned rolling dice, which is Railroad Inc.
yeah,
Railroad Inc.
I need to look into that one more. I've had a couple people talk about it, and I've read about it, and I love roll and writes. So the fact that I haven't done that yet is crazy.
Mhm.
I got into
And once,
cartographers.
yeah, once when I was teaching games to a class with 120 students, so what I did, I asked them to draw the grid on a sheet of paper, and then I rolled the dice and I projected the images on a big screen, so 120 students could play at the same time.
Yeah,
And at parties, I done that with a large dry erase board at parties with 20 people. So it's a game that really scales very well to any number of people.
cool. Yeah, I want to look into that one more.
We used to
Um,
bring it to restaurants. There was a restaurant that my kids and I liked, a breakfast place, but it was particularly slow. And we had timed it that we ordered, and we played exactly a game of Railroad Inc. And they would bring the food exactly what we were scoring it. I
yeah,
don't know
I
how we managed to just get it exactly right.
uh, for a while we were playing a game from a local designer, and we would order our food, and then we'd play as many hands as we could of this game, and whoever had the lowest score had to buy lunch.
Okay.
We just played until the food showed up, and then it's like, okay, whoever has
Boom.
lowest
That's
score,
it.
you're buying.
Boom.
So, what all do you teach there at IU then?
So I teach Italian. I teach Italian literature and culture. I've just become the director of the Florence program. So I'm gonna starting from this summer. I'm gonna start bringing the students to Florence to look at the art and talk about the history. So teaching about Florence in Florence, that should be fun. Um, I teach often for the honors college, and that's where I can teach some of my interdisciplinary stuff. And so, for example, I can teach about military history and play war games with the students. So I teach kind of like a range of things. What I really like at the U is indeed that if people have multiple interests, they can teach outside of their official discipline, so to speak. There's opportunity for that. Yeah, but my main thing is Italian culture and literature.
No, no. There you go. And then board games on the side, That's what I
Yes,
always
board game on the side.
that's what I always joke is like, yeah, I love, I do a board game podcast, I'm a board game designer, I'm a board game publisher, and I work at a university to pay for all of that. So You gotta have some way to pay
Yes.
for the hobby. Well, Marco, I really want to thank you for being on the show today. Um, I really hope that the listeners look into your book. It is just absolutely fantastic. Like I said, take your time, go through it slow, go through it chapter by chapter, game by game, look them all up. They are Some of the games are just absolutely amazing that uh, you I never would have known about Universal Truth, and probably would never have heard about Cryo, which is weird because that's a Z-Man game and I never even heard of it.
There's so much excellent stuff going out that it's easy to miss. And one of the purposes again of the book sometimes is like, hey, here's a list of 10 games, which may not be typical in essays. One of the reviewers early on, one of the readers from the publisher is like, hey, can you shorten these lists? I'm like, no, I may add I may add a couple of titles in the final proofs, because kind of the point is I want people to realize how much there is and to become even more curious and more eager to
And
explore the hobby.
like you said, and like we've said it already before, but like just the progression. I mean, the whole thing on cards, like how playing cards used to just be playing cards. They had a number and a suit, and that's it. And now you've got games like Universal Truth, where you place the card changes what the use of that card is. And it's like, man, look how far we've come.
Yes.
So if people want to reach out to you, Marco, how can they do that?
You can just send me an email. That's the easiest way. If you Google my first and last name, Marco Arnaudo, there aren't as many as you think with that name, and so you're gonna find my institutional email address, and and then you can shoot an email there. Also, on Board Game Geek, you can look me up under my name as a Board Game Geek user, and you can also send me an email there. If sending an email to a university address seems to I don't know, cumbersome or worrisome.
Well, that's
The
how I
fun
found
mail,
you.
that just send me an email. Board Game Geek or my institutional email is fine.
Excellent. And as usual, if you want to reach out to me, it's facebook.com/eatlunchandboardgame, eatlunchandboardgame.com, or you can always email me at eatlunchandboardgame@gmail.com. And remember, board games build bridges. When you're gaming, why not be comfy? Go over to supportplayer.org. Click on the cards, pieces, and dice to get some merch. These t-shirts are some of the most comfortable I have ever worn. That's supportplayer.org, and there's a link on eatlunchandboardgame.com.